Okay, hello Diane. Thank you so much
Hi.
for joining me. Yeah, you and I go way back, right? College, friends since college. So,
Yes.
again, thanks for being here and for sharing your story to help others. So this is a safe place to share. If you don't feel comfortable answering a question, just please say so. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, great. All right, so let's begin with you telling your past story.
Okay, so basically, I was married to an abusive alcoholic for 20 years. He was more verbally abusive than physical, but I've always told people that verbal abuse, I think, is a lot worse than physical because bruises go away, they heal. Um, but verbal abuse sticks with you. In fact, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and when people say certain things, it triggers a past memory that's bad. So it takes time to get over it. And
Right.
sometimes when somebody's abusing you, they're saying things. Um, like I actually learned when I divorced my ex that he was a narcissist. I never knew what a narcissist was until I divorced him. And when I found out, I looked back and I said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like the projecting of things on you, and it all really made me realize, wow, he really is a narcissist. And some of the things he would do was say things, and I used to doubt myself, like, wait, did I say this? Did I do that? Um, but really it was just him projecting, which is a big characteristic of a narcissist. Um, but basically, I stayed in the marriage for 20 years. People used to ask, why did you stay in it so long? I stayed in it being Catholic for the kids, thought it was the best thing to do to hold the family together. Um, but I, spoke with a couple of people, and, some people said, look, my parents waited until, we were in college to divorce. And they said that they would have been better off if their parents divorced when they were younger. And I look back now, even my own kids have told me that I should have divorced him a lot sooner. Um, I also think that had I divorced him sooner, I would have had the kids with me. I asked for full custody, sole occupancy of the house. I lost everything. My kids were teenagers and he manipulated them with freedom and money, which what teenager doesn't want that? Plus, the fact that he wouldn't let me have the marital home, the kids wanted to stay in the marital home where they grew up. Um, so that was hard. I lost my kids for 3 years. Very distressing to me to not have a relationship with them. And to me, teenage years are critical. Kids really need you. And being able to text a kid is not the same as having them in your home, seeing them every day. And we did have joint custody, but he would often threaten the girls not to come to my house. And I was like the strict one with the rules. So they didn't want to be with me. What kid doesn't, what kid wants to live with a parent who has rules? When you're
Mm,
a teenager and you could just go off and do whatever you want, or defy the rules, and the parent's drunk and has no idea what's going on. It's easy, life is easy.
right.
Um, and I look back, I did have a restraining order against him. He was actually out of the house for 3 months. And I probably should have ended it then. The kids were a little bit younger. Um, but, he ended up going to AA and violence abuse prevention, not because I had asked him to, but because he was forced to by the law. And he actually did well for a year and a half. He stayed sober. But then he went back to it. He took the kids to visit his father. And when they came back, my older one confided in me that he drank every day and he encouraged them to drink. And she had asked me to be the parent and call CPS, and CPS couldn't do anything because it was 24 hours past when the event happened. It was also out of state. So they couldn't do anything. But that triggered in me, you know what, he's married to alcohol. And you know, he's not in it for the family. You know, at one point he did stop going to AA, and we noticed a difference in his demeanor, that AA was definitely helping. And he made excuse after excuse, why he couldn't go back. And, I just said, you know what, I'm done. And he actually also said that 97% of, people in AA don't make it. They go back to drinking. And he was one of those, people who went back. So I said, he's married to alcohol. I'm done. I was exhausted at that point. Being married to somebody who drinks, and, you know, I felt like a single parent for 15 years, working all day, coming home, taking care of the kids, and not getting help, because he would basically come home, drink, and pass out. And, you know, he would wake up when the kids were back home and sleeping after all their activities. So it was exhausting. So I said, you know what, I'm doing it all by myself now. What's the difference? And, you know, also, being at, social events with him was scary, because I never knew, what he was gonna say, how he was gonna put me down. Or not just me, but other people, how he would treat other people. He was not very nice toward other people. We actually lost a lot of friends because of the way he spoke to people. So I just said, you know what, I'm better off being by myself. And I pulled the trigger and said, I'm done.
Mhm. And when you said about CPS, it was out of state, what does that mean? Like, was there any record of, with CPS, of his, you know, his actions or what transpired in the home?
Yeah, there actually were, a couple of incidents. He was actually indicated on a case, and he paid a lawyer money to have it closed, and he went to, it was a workshop about parenting with teenagers, which he asked me to go to. I thought it was great. And, they offered a second one, and I thought it was so informative. I said, oh, let's do the next one. And he said, are you kidding me? I just did this to close that case. And I had no idea, like, this is how he manipulated me. And I had no idea that he even paid a lawyer to close the case. And then later on in the divorce, you know, this is one of the reasons why I didn't fare well, because that it was a sealed case at that point. It wasn't admissible in court. And to me, it's just beyond me how a case can be closed when somebody was indicated.
And there was other ones too, you said, or just the one? Was there another?
Well, there was that one, and then through the divorce, a couple of times, CPS was called. But each time, my daughters basically lied. In fact, I actually have custody of my younger one now. And, you know, she ended up getting a restraining order against her father. And when she did, she said, you know, Mom, this was the first time that I did not lie to authorities. I didn't protect Dad.
Well, that's why they lie, right? It was protection for their dad, pretty
Yeah, I
much.
mean, he is
Like,
their father.
along with manipulation, like you said, right? Because he would probably give them monetary things, a car or whatever have you, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
your
he threatened
attorney,
a lot too. He threatened
Mhm.
a lot, you know, if you didn't do this, or he would actually grill them what they should say, what, like, when they had their legal guardian. You know, we were basically told by our lawyers, we're gonna have two meetings. One of them, the father's gonna bring them there, one of them, the mother is, because I guess they feel like the kids answer questions differently depending on which parent is bringing them there. Well, he had, quite a few more meetings, and from what I understand, from what my daughters told me, he grilled them what to say and what not to say.
Which is totally not the thing you're supposed to do, right? I mean,
Exactly. So
and I
he,
know you follow all the rules, I am sure of
yeah,
it. You did everything to the T, you did everything
yeah,
right, dotted every I, crossed every T, but clearly that did not matter, right?
it
Whatever
didn't
he did,
matter. Yeah, and
so
it
unfortunate.
really, it boggled my mind that the legal system was not aware of it. Like, he completely manipulated the legal system, and I actually complained to my lawyers saying that, you know, there's something wrong here, because it shouldn't just be the legal guardian, the guardian taking what the kids say. They should also be interviewing their doctors, their teachers, their coaches, the clubs and activities that they were involved in, even neighbors.
Neighbors,
Um,
yeah,
and family members on both sides of the
sure,
family. I mean, family members, it's kind of hard to go in that direction because obviously his family members are going to lean toward him, mine are going to lean toward me. But when you talk with people in person, you get a good feel for what's going on. But then there are outside neutral people. Like I was the one who took them to all their doctor's appointments. When it came to school related events, it was always me. And clearly, if the law guardian spoke to those people, even their coaches, I was the one who always had them at their sporting events, their practices, music. I was the one always taking them, when they had recitals, it was always
Mhm.
me. And if those people were questioned, the lawyers would have a much better idea of which parent was really taking care of the kids. Um,
Right,
so
but
very,
I believe you, I recall you saying at times, since we're friends and we talk, even his family would side with you, or,
oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's, I mean,
well,
so, yeah,
throughout the divorce, like his family talks to me, they don't talk to him anymore,
right, right.
which I
So I
think is
wonder,
very telling.
yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, investigating and talking to family members actually might have helped, right?
Yeah,
So, and yeah, and your attorney kind of advised you what to do all along and kind of set you up, right, for failure. Is that correct?
pretty much, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say that my lawyers didn't try, they tried to paint a picture of him being that alcoholic. But, the way the court system works, if something's from too long ago, they don't really care about it. They want very recent, like even the fact that I had a restraining order on him. It was, I think about a year and a half, maybe 2 years prior to me actually going through the divorce. Too much time had lapsed, so they didn't even want to hear about it. So they don't even look at the history.
Wow, because honestly, if you don't make changes, your history repeats itself, right? I mean, we know this,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, not to say that, someone has a life sentence, they can always change and better their behavior, but clearly you could probably show that he has not changed, you know what I mean? And you would think that history would matter.
Yeah, yeah, and he
So,
actually, according to my daughters, he actually drank a lot more throughout the divorce.
yeah,
And from what I understand, he's still drinking. I mean, I don't keep in touch with him. I only deal with him if I have to deal with our daughters. That's it.
right,
I don't keep
right,
tabs on him.
right. All right. Knowing what you know now, what would you change of your past story if you could for the better?
I would heed the red flags. I definitely had red flags. Prior to marrying him, his friends, my friends made comments because, he was very arrogant, and quick to put people down and bully people. Personally, I think that he was bullied growing up. He was not a big person. He was actually short and very skinny. Um, so, if it came to actual physical strength, he didn't have physical strength. But intelligence, he was a very smart man. He's a very smart man. And that's one thing that attracted me to him. But along with being smart, he had a very sharp tongue. And his words could kill. He would sometimes say things to you that you're just like, where did this come from? And it would make you feel so bad. You would want to just dig a hole and bury yourself. I can remember being at a Christmas function with his company. I was being introduced to his boss and his boss's wife. I don't even remember what he said, but the rest of the night, I didn't want to be there. Here I am dressed very elegantly in a nice black velvet dress, long dress. And I didn't want to be there. I just wanted to dig a hole and bury myself and hide because of what he said, just putting me down. And, all my family functions, a lot of them he missed. We had, traditions every year, barbecues, Christmas dinners. The barbecues especially, he missed because they were a distance to drive to. And I was better off at all those functions without him because I didn't have to worry about what he was gonna say about me, about somebody else, or how he was gonna speak to somebody and put them down and make them feel uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
like I said before, we lost friends because he would put people in their place and make them feel so uncomfortable. Nobody
Yeah.
wanted to hang out with us anymore.
I can see where that would be very difficult, and that you're just trying to get through it, just whatever you had to do. It's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah.
Yeah.
So those were some red flags, that just his words, not just toward me, but to other people. Um, and I did a month before we married, I found papers. I was doing a deep cleaning and I found papers in a file folder of his and I did go through them and I found out that he was involved in a drunk driving accident where he killed the person and he put somebody in a coma for the rest of their life. And when I questioned him about it, he got very angry at me. He actually threw a chair at me. And I ended up going to his brother's house that night. And his brother actually told me, you know more about this than we do. And he said that the father just kind of swept everything under the carpet. It wasn't talked about. And I know he was a very angry person. His mother used to always call him one of the last 12 angry men. And I believe a lot of his anger stemmed from that accident. I don't think he ever dealt with it, ever got help for it. So if it was ever brought up, in fact, the times that he physically abused me, I remember I always brought that incident up. And that's when, he would just come at me physically.
Yeah, because he didn't deal with it, obviously. And I mean, let's face it, I mean, I think if anyone were in his shoes after what happened, I mean, anyone would have to, you would have to learn how to deal with that, right? Contend with it. It's a
Yeah,
tough thing to get
it's
over. I mean,
a
but
huge burden to bear
it's a
on your
hurt,
shoulders.
sure.
Yeah.
It's a huge burden, and it's unfortunate that he never got help to deal with it, right? Because that it just manifested in, continued issues and problems and destroyed, your marriage or family. It's unfortunate, but it's a common pattern, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
this
but
is what people do. Yeah.
I was the one blamed for all the issues, instead of
Well,
him going to therapy, he would tell me, no, you're the one who needs to go to therapy. And I did, because I'm thinking, all these things he's telling me, I was going crazy. I'm thinking, okay, I'll go to therapy. And when I sat with the therapist, he actually said to me, he questioned me about my childhood, and then he questioned
mhm,
me about his childhood. And then he told me, you don't need therapy. He said, you actually had a very normal childhood. He said, your husband needs help. And he said, you're welcome to come here every week, but you're wasting your money. And he basically told me you should get together with your friends and complain. And that's what I did. I dealt with it by, getting
mhm,
together with other moms and we would all complain about our
mhm,
husbands.
right.
Um, just a way to get through it. But, to me, a good therapist will ask about your childhood and your upbringing. And I remember when he was served divorce papers, he was very upset. He actually sat me down and asked me to postpone the divorce. And my response was, look, I've given you, like baseball, 3 strikes, you're out. I said, I've given you a lot more than 3 strikes. I've asked you time and time again to get help. And we did go to marriage counseling together.
Mhm,
I actually went to a lawyer, got papers, put them in his face, and I said, if you don't sign us up for marriage counseling, I'm filing these papers in a week. So we did go, and that counselor was horrible. We would have together sessions, separate sessions, and whenever we had separate sessions, I would always bring up that I truly believe that his anger is stemming from his childhood and that accident, because through the marriage, I learned a lot more about his family. I didn't really know his family well prior to getting married because they lived far away. Um, and I didn't see them that often. If I saw them, it was on a special occasion and everybody was on their best behavior. It wasn't until I was in the marriage about 5 years that people started showing their true colors. And I used to say to myself, what did I get myself into? Um, but this therapist that we were going to for marriage counseling would ask questions like, do you get mad if, he leaves the toilet seat up? It takes less time for me to put the toilet seat
Mhm.
down than to actually spend time complaining and arguing with him if he put it down. I don't care about that. And I would say to her when we had separate sessions, I need you to ask him about that accident and get him some help. I don't know, maybe that's where his anger is stemming from, because I would ask him, why are you so angry? Yeah, so we have a beautiful family, a beautiful home, we have no financial issues. Why are you so angry? And he never had an answer.
Sounds like that therapist never really got to the core of the issue. You know what I mean? It's like always
Right.
dealt with superficially, which I mean, that's the thing about therapy, you really have to get to the bottom, of
Yeah.
what's causing that behavior.
Right.
Sounds
So
like you
in
did a
my
lot of
opinion, a good therapist
Mhm.
will ask about your childhood, because a lot of times when you have problems in the future, they do stem from something that happened in your childhood. So to me, a good therapist is asking about that. This therapist did not. And I don't know if she ever discussed with him that accident and got anything out of it. And both of us actually agreed that we were going nowhere with that marriage therapist. And
So at
then,
that point, pretty much the marriage at that point is really kind of over, right? Now you're just kind of going through the motions, right? I mean, it takes
yeah,
two to be in a relationship. And I think at that point, you probably checked out, right? I mean, you
I
tried and
did.
yeah.
And shortly after that is when uh I had the restraining order against him. He came home drunk one night and hit me in the back of the head so hard my glasses went flying across the room and hit the wall, and he did it in front of the kids. And he threw us out of the house. And I called the cops. He was arrested and they forced him to go to AA and violence abuse prevention. Um, And, like I said, in hindsight, that's when I should have said, I'm done, and I should have never let him back in the house. But I was actually ecstatic that he was finally getting some help. Although the law forced him to do it, he was good for a year and a half. Things were better. But then when my daughter told me he went back to drinking, I just said, you know what? Like he said, 3% survive, they make it through AA. He was part of that 97% that didn't. And I said, I can't. He's married to alcohol and he's just not going to change.
Yeah, it sounds like he didn't want to dig deep enough to address the core issues, unfortunately. And so
Yeah.
therefore, I think we all kind of want to escape reality or the unwanted reality. And what people do is they turn to something that's going to make them feel better, alcohol, temporarily, it's a temporary fix, but it doesn't solve the root cause of the issue, unfortunately. So it's like you keep repetitively doing that behavior to kind of escape, but you're never really escaping the hard truth, the truth that was not able to be, to be faced, to be addressed, so it's unfortunate. And he's not alone. A lot of us do this, unfortunately, in order, we all know we can't help those that we love no matter what, you can't do anything. It's really got to be up to them to number one, own it, and then, take action, make the good choices to affect positive change. And unfortunately, that is it's the simple answer, but yet not easily followed, right?
Right.
It's
Mhm.
unfortunate, and that,
Yeah.
you and your daughter, your children suffered from that. And it's unfortunate, and for him as well, right? I mean, because clearly he's not, living a good life, he's struggling, right? And so he's not good, and everybody else around him is not good. And really the only one that can help him is himself, right?
Right.
So it's tough. I feel for you, and you certainly never deserved it. Don't deserve it, and I'm glad now that, as your friend, I see that, you're doing well,
Yeah.
you're moved on, and, you've
Mhm.
got
Yeah.
a great life set up. You have a great career. You have someone else in your life now that treats you well,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So good for you. Good for you. So if you could rewrite your story, would you?
No, I truly believe that God has a path for you, and this is your journey. You learn from it, and I've certainly learned a lot from it. So no, I would not, and I have a good friend. We actually took a trip together. You know her very well. she always says, there's a reason for everything. So there's a reason why I met him, why we married, why I had 20 years of a marriage. And I've definitely learned a lot. Yeah.
Yes,
I mean, I'm not gonna say it was all bad. We did do a lot of really nice things
sure.
together as a family, and I will say he's a very intelligent person. I learned a lot from him. But I do remember him asking me why, why were you ever attracted to me? And I did say, you're an intelligent person. I said, you do have a very high IQ, but you have a very low EQ. And he didn't
Mm,
know what that was. And I said, emotional quotient. I said, you don't know how to treat people. And you know what, as smart as somebody is, if you don't know how to treat somebody with respect and love, like I was lacking that. I even remember when I went back to work and I had to tell my boss that I had a restraining order. He said, do you need, some time off? And I said, are you kidding? I don't want to be at home. I said, I walk in and I don't know if Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde is walking in. I'm walking on eggshells at home. I said, I get more respect here at work from everyone than I do at home.
right. So unfortunate, but your reality, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any advice that you could give someone or that could help someone in the present day who is faced with the same or similar situation you were faced with?
Course, don't be afraid to step out of that situation. I know it can be very scary. For me, like I was never on my own before. I always had somebody in my life. And it was afraid, scary, I should say. I was afraid. It was scary for me to be alone. But I have a very supportive family, very supportive friends. So people were always around. I'm friends that I lost through the marriage came out of the woodworks and came back, and they reminded me of things that happened to me through my marriage that I had totally forgotten, which I guess was part of that PTSD. I just like put it way away, like I just didn't even want to think about it. So, like people who don't have maybe a supportive family and friends, there are other resources out there. There's always somebody to go to get help. So don't be afraid. And also, like even just the other day on the radio, they were actually asking a question about, what did you lose in your divorce? And yeah, I lost a lot. I lost, my marital home. I lost my kids for 3 years, but I thought about, what? Better thing to ask is what did you gain?
Mm.
And what did I gain? I gained freedom. I gained respect. People can, like it's about time you got divorced. I can't believe you stayed with him that long. His own family, hallelujah, you finally, you left
Yeah.
him. But I also gained, I have a wonderful relationship now where I have a man in my life who respects me and treats me well. And I see how much better it is out there than what I had. So to me, that's important. Other things, go to therapy. I was told by the one therapist that I didn't need it, but when I went through my divorce, I went through therapy. I actually went with both of my kids, which was helpful, helping them get through it, and even me, improving our relationship because, he always made me out to be the bad guy. It was a good cop, bad cop. We did not co-parent, and I was the bad guy because I had the rules. But
Well,
I
he
believe,
also alienated you as a parent. He
oh, yes,
manipulated your daughters and, he made you look like you said, the bad guy and afforded all these freedoms to them. And they were just young and didn't understand, that,
right,
like you said, yeah.
yeah. And it, it was definitely hurtful, things that my daughters would say to me, they came from him. Um, so, I'm not gonna go into detail, but I just
No, no.
remember certain things that came out of my daughter's mouths. They were the words of their father. And, kids observe things. They observe their parents. You're supposed to be a role model for your kids. So here, you wonder when kids misbehave or they say certain things, where is it coming from? Well, that old adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It's very true. They definitely have some of the characteristics of their father, you know, and I can't, you know, take that away from them. But they have to learn that they're not the best qualities, you know, like my older one actually moved out of his house, and she's been with her boyfriend's family, and she said, I left because it was such a toxic environment. And like I was becoming him. I was looking down at people, making comments to people, and she said, I didn't want to go there. So I'm proud of her that she did that, but you know, she didn't come to me because he would threaten her if she were at my house. What are you doing at your mother's house? I'm gonna take your car away. And she needed her car. So, you
Mm.
know, again, it's the teenager mentality. Well, am I gonna go live with mom and not have a car, or am I gonna have my car to get to school? So,
Yeah, it's so
a horrible
unfortunate
way to
as
manipulate.
yeah, manipulate, and it's so unfortunate because you know what you have to endure as a mom. You know what I mean? You love your children, and to have that behavior, it's so hurtful. You know,
Mhm.
those that are closest to us unfortunately hurt us the most.
Yeah,
And you know, I think any mom, myself included, you know, it's hurtful when your kids, you know, come at you like that, and sometimes you're just like,
yeah,
what did I do? What did I say? What happened? When you think you're only doing the best that you can, and you know, it's hard. So I'm
yeah.
sorry you had to endure that, you know.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I mean,
based on
I'll give you one example of
yeah.
something that was said, when he took them, to visit his father. They said to me, and you're not coming with us because you're not our mother. You're just the woman who birthed us.
Oh wow. Oh
Now,
gosh.
where would those words be coming from?
I'm so sorry. That's
Yeah,
so
and
sad.
that sat with me. It was very upsetting.
I'm
Yeah,
so sorry.
yep.
But I know now things are getting better though, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, my
yeah,
kids
I
are
know. Thank
around, yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Thank
Or even
goodness.
my younger one who's with me now, she said, wow, I didn't realize how toxic dad's house was. And I think she's also realizing that my house is not as bad as she thought with the rules. Like, I think she's hearing from her friends, parents, even people who have been in my house, you know, and she observes the adults in my house interacting. I think she's learning that, wow, you know, that wasn't normal what I was getting at dad's, you know, and these rules that he says, yeah, you know, your mother with all those rules, they're typical rules. Like any rules that I had were not unlike any rules that a parent who wants to guide their kid and what's best for their kid in life would have. You know, I didn't make these, you know,
No.
astronomical rules, you know, what they could or couldn't
No,
do.
he just
I think are
manipulated them. He knew,
reasonable.
yeah, he manipulated them. He knew what he needed to say or do to get them to sway his way. And unfortunately, you know, you were the victim in that scenario. You know what I mean? You were the one that had to endure all that. And it's again unfortunate. So, but
Well,
like I said,
to me, the worst part was that because he didn't co-parent with me in the best interest of the kids,
right.
my kids were hurt the most, and that's what hurt me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I learned through the divorce that anything I wanted, I wasn't getting. I wanted my girls to be with me. I didn't get them, you know, he found a way, you know, money, freedom to get them to be with him, to get back at me. And it wasn't until, you know, he was so drunk and he did something, that my younger one finally said, you know what, I'm not lying anymore. And even
Right.
you know, the cop who came to the house said, look, at the expense of your safety, you have to weigh, do you want that freedom and money, or do you want to be in the safety of your mom's house with some rules? And
Yeah.
she chose me, and I think she's realizing that my rules aren't that bad.
Right. No, they never were, I'm sure of it. It's just
Yeah.
again, the situation, the manipulation and being a kid and you know, grabbing at the, you know, the free car
Easy
and
way out, yeah,
the freedom, you know,
yeah.
that's it. So based on your story, is there a present day solution that could have helped your past situation?
Um, well, one thing that I learned, and I tell my daughters, is when you fall in love with somebody, make sure that you know their family well. Because you don't just marry that person, you marry their family. And when you learn about the family dynamics, it says a lot about what's gonna happen in your family. And I learned that there were a lot of issues in his family. Yeah, I actually learned probably 15 years into my marriage that my mother-in-law was an alcoholic. I never knew she was an alcoholic. When I saw her, now I look back and it makes sense. I always thought she was drinking, Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Turns out it was rum and Coke. And I think back and I'm like, now whenever I looked at her, her eyes were always glassy. She was always more calm because I guess it calmed her, it numbed her. And I think my ex was a very high strung, angry person. That characteristic of his came from his mother. And how did she calm it down? She drank.
Mm.
And I do remember one of my good friends from high school asked my sister at our wedding, who's that woman who's, drunk, walking, swaying all over the dance floor? It was my mother-in-law. And I chucked it up like, oh, it's a wedding. She's having a good time. I was very naive.
Yeah.
So, don't be so naive when you get involved in something. And yeah, it's very important to know the family of the person you're marrying. That would
Right.
have
So,
helped me.
right. So as you said, everything happens for a reason. And of course, you wouldn't change it, right? Because this is part of your story. But if you can go back, because I was in your life at the time. I was in your bridal party.
Yes.
I was there a few weeks before your wedding. I don't, I my memory can fail me a little bit too, but it was I believe a few weeks before your wedding, and you had told me about discovering that file and what happened. And I remember as a concerned, caring friend, I said to you, Diane, it's not too late. You don't have to go through with this. You don't have to marry him, because I was thinking about, what kind of future will you have given the situation? And, I don't know if you recall your response, but obviously you went through with the marriage. And is there anything I could have said? I mean, to help people in the future, like that it might be, a friend, because you never know when to step or you don't want to overstep, or is there anything you think at that time I could have said or done that might have, influenced you in a better way?
And maybe, talking to my parents, I think a big reason why I went through with it, well, two reasons. One, I didn't see, a problem with him drinking then. We did go out with his friends. He did drink, but he wasn't getting sloppy and drunk. And it's not like he was drinking every night. He liked fine wine. He would buy an expensive bottle of wine and milk it for a week because he was cheap. If he was a real alcoholic, he'd be spending a ton of money every night, drinking every night, going to a bar, and that wasn't happening. It was typical. You go out with the friends, you socialize, you have, a couple of drinks, that's it. I didn't think it was abnormal. It wasn't until we bought our home and he befriended a neighbor and they were golfing together. Then I saw he was drinking a lot with this guy. And the drinking progressed, like beer, he then went to rum and coke, his sugar levels got high, and then it progressed to pure vodka, and it just got worse and worse. Um, but I think another reason why I was afraid to say, you know what, I'm not calling this off is because my sister, the same thing happened to her. Um, my twin said to her, you can call the wedding off. You don't have to marry this guy. And her response was, it's too late now. Mom and daddy paid for everything already. And that's how I felt. It was a month before the wedding and, they paid for everything. And yeah, it's only money, but again, at the time, I didn't see the problem of alcoholism. Like I said, his drinking was typical like everybody else. And I was also learning a little bit about his family. I kind of actually felt sorry for him and his upbringing. So like when he was rude to me, making comments, I kind of just brushed them over my shoulder, like, well, I know who I am. That old sticks and stones, won't
Yeah,
hurt
same.
me. I didn't let it bother me. Like, I know who I am, and he's saying this because he's hurting inside. And I actually felt sorry for him. So I almost felt like, am I taking him under my wing and showing him, life is a little bit better. You don't have to worry about that past. Just move on, which is something that I've learned through the divorce. don't look at the past, move on, look forward.
Right.
There's something better out there.
Right. And I remember, I mean, he, like you said, I mean, he wasn't all bad, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just, it's about the choices that we make, it's not about, you try not to, at least I try not to judge, right? You don't judge people, judge actions, not people, try to trust people and give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think that you being a good human being, that's what you tried to do. You tried to
yeah,
see the good in someone. I mean, really, what's so wrong with that, right? It's just,
right.
unfortunately, we do have to protect and set boundaries, right? We have to set clear boundaries, even from the ones that we love, because especially those, they can hurt us the most. So, it's hard to, it's hard to think that way because you want to love, and especially your family, you want to love and you want to trust and you want to be vulnerable. But unfortunately, the family or the ones that are closest to us can hurt us the most,
Mhm.
So yeah, I totally get it. So what are the things you do to face current challenges?
Well, I walk, I love to hike. In fact, people asked me, how did you deal with him in the 20 years of your marriage? And I said, I walked a lot, and I did. I was
Mhm.
always walking. I'm one of those people, like, I didn't like to fight. I'm not a fighter. I don't like controversy, conflict. And fighting with him was a no-win situation. He would actually say, I'm the king, I know everything. So you were getting nowhere if you fought with him. So how did I deal with my frustration and anger? I would go for a walk and walk that stress off. And I still do that. I do yoga. I like to swim. What else? I love to travel and explore. And just being with my friends, hanging out with them, it's fun.
Mhm.
So just, I think it's important to have a good network of friends and see them all the time, hanging out with them. I mean, I have a group of ladies that I hang out with all the time, and all we do is laugh.
Mhm.
And it's amazing. We just have a great time every time we're together.
That's great. And we
And
had a great time. We had a great time in Maine. We had a girls' trip
yes,
to Maine, which was
yeah, I see the picture
was
behind
great.
you on
Yeah.
hike around Jordan Pond.
That's
Yeah.
right. We had a great time.
Exactly. And
You're
look,
right.
you guys learned the game of Liverpool, the card
I
game.
know. We had so much fun on a rainy
Yes.
day. It was great.
And and I play that game with my family. I've taught it to friends and they love it. So like
Yeah.
when we get together, we play that game and we just have such a great time.
It's so simple, right? But it really, it's like a world of difference, right? The simple things
Yeah,
that could really help us. I mean, they could also destroy us, right? Simple things, but they can also, the right things, the right simple things could certainly help us. So yes, I
yeah,
mean, I'm with you on, the love, the support, the friends, peace,
yeah.
so
To me,
totally.
that's what's important in life, not how much money you have, where you live, what you have. It's not important. You
Mhm.
have to have your network of friends. Like they always say that when you're at a person's funeral, the number of people there says a lot about you. My dad passed away almost 2 years ago, and the priest made a comment about considering his age. Look at how many people are in this room. He was a loved man, and a lot of his friends had passed away, but his friends' kids were there
Mhm.
honoring my father, and that meant a lot to me, and it says a
Sure.
lot. So, like your friend circle, your family, you need to be there for them. That's what's important in life. And
Very true.
and they're gonna go away if you don't treat them right. And that's what
True.
happened to me. In my opinion, my ex pushed me away because he didn't know how to treat me. And I finally woke up and I said, this isn't right. And staying in this marriage is not showing my girls what to look for in a person. And is
Right.
there some damage? Are they gonna pick men? A lot of times they say the girl picks a man like their father, the guy picks a woman like the mother. And it is true, you do find those qualities in that person.
Well,
So
hopefully they'll break the cycle, right?
I hope so.
I hope the cycle ends with them, right? Like that movie, it ends with us. Hopefully they'll break
Yeah,
that cycle and they'll find a good man that respects them and treats them well and does the right thing and, loves, supports and accepts them for who they are, so
yeah.
I wish them that, and I'm sure they will, because they have you as a mom to guide them, so I'm sure they
Thank
will.
you. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. What would you like to say to the people in your story, whether living or no longer living with us?
Well, obviously to my father, I'm sorry for not heeding his words. My dad at one point did say to me, he's not the guy for you. You shouldn't be marrying him, but love is blind and I didn't listen to him. So, I'm sorry I didn't listen to his words. And just everybody in my family, all my friends who have just been around supporting me through this ordeal because believe it or not, I had said to my lawyers quite a few times, I should have stayed miserably married because of what he did to my girls. Like I actually was protecting my girls, shielding them, but also my girls were getting older. I couldn't hide the alcoholism. They were finding his bottles hidden around the house. They would actually say to me, Mom, I can't have my friends over anymore. I'm so embarrassed by his behavior. And that's how I felt going to family functions. I never told my girls, yeah, well, I'm better off without your father here because he's embarrassing. But deep down, whenever I went, I was relieved. It was a relief that he wasn't there. Um,
So do you
so
really think staying with him would have been better when even your girls said, it's time to,
no,
no,
I look now, definitely not. I'm glad I
yeah,
did what I did, but because he gave me such a hard time in the
yeah,
divorce. And I'm thinking, like, I felt like a horrible person because what mother loses custody of her children in the marital home? Like, I felt like a mother who's a criminal or a drug addict, neither of which I am. Why did I lose my kids? Like there's something terribly wrong with the legal system for that to have happened. But I was really hurting inside, like what is wrong with me that I don't have custody of my children? He's the alcoholic. He's the one with the problem, not me. I
right.
just,
And I used to say that all the time to you because, like I said, you're very intelligent. You dot every I, you cross every T. I'm sure whatever you presented would have been accurate, honest, specific, irrefutable, verifiable information. A great, a spectacular account of the facts of what actually happened. And I mean, to my dismay, I'm like, I just don't understand this. Like,
yeah,
I've said
nobody
to you,
understands
no,
it.
I've said to you many times, I'm like, gosh, I hope good prevails. I mean, I hope goodness prevails. It has to. And you'd be like, I don't think so. I'm like, no, but it has to, right? Like
Yeah.
good has to prevail. And I still believe that, obviously, to the end. And you are seeing things, right? Getting
Oh, yeah,
better. I
things
mean,
are so much better
yeah,
now.
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Everybody who I've spoken to, who knows my story, they've all asked, how did he get custody?
yeah.
And it was joint custody, but then my kids didn't see me because he threatened for them to come see me because that was his way of getting back at me. He was so angry that I divorced him.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate. I'm so, so sorry. It's terrible. This is going to be a touchy question, and it's not
Okay.
one that you may be prepared for. And like I said, if you don't want to answer, you do not have to. But what would you say to your ex if he would hear what you had to say and receive what you had to say?
Um, I honestly don't know what I would say to him because talking to him is like talking to a wall. He's always right. Um, I have no words for him or anything to say to him. I mean, people tell me that, I need to learn to forgive him. And I stayed in the marriage, those famous words in sickness and in health. Well, he has a sickness, alcoholism. So I did stay in it for him, but it got to the point where it was so draining that I wasn't doing well. Um, and I'm doing a lot better now. So I don't really know, honestly, what
Right.
I
Okay.
have no words for him,
Right.
you know, I really don't. I mean, like karma, I always say to people, there's karma. You don't want to wish anything bad on a person, but he treated me so poorly, and, I'm angry. What he ended up doing to our daughters. Like, I feel like from what I learned about narcissism, I was his supply. And when I was out of the house, our daughters became his supply. Even my younger one actually said, "Wow, mom, I feel very used by dad." And I'm not going to say anything to her. I don't like to talk bad about him in front of my kids. But that's what I learned. I was used. I feel like through the entire marriage, I was not really loved. Because I've learned that narcissists don't know how to love. I was used. I was a supply.
Do you think
Um,
he could ever, change for the better or evolve in this lifetime? Do you think that he actually is capable at all of doing that? Like have a realization to change for the better, or you don't think so?
I don't think so. I mean, they say when somebody hits rock bottom, they'll change. I actually thought his rock bottom was when I had him arrested, and he was going through AA and violence abuse prevention, but clearly it wasn't. He went back to drinking. And then I divorced him, and it just triggered more anger in him. Like, how could you do this to me? Anybody who goes against him, he shows anger toward them. He did it to my daughters, and that's when I would see them, through the divorce, when he was angry at them and threw them out. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my younger one was thrown out, and in my house, not for a long period of time because of my rules. She didn't have, she couldn't go out on a school night partying. Is that such a bad rule? What parent allows that?
No, it's not a bad rule. Do you think like it's his ego that just would not, you think it's his ego maybe that won't let him um
Probably because he does say all the time, "I'm the king, I know everything."
yeah.
That's why I feel like I don't have anything to say to him, because anything you say, he just takes it, twists it, throws it back at you, and makes you look bad. Even I remember my younger daughter, we were at a school meeting, and she said, somehow, even though dad is wrong, he makes everybody in that room look so bad, and he comes out the winner. That's what he does. He's very good at it.
Right.
So, I would be afraid to say something to him, because whatever I said to him, what would he do? How would he twist it and throw it back in my face and make me feel bad? I don't want to feel bad. So there's no reason for me to say anything to him, because that's all I know about him. He just knows how to just put me down and make me feel bad.
Ego is one of those things that I've learned myself over the years that it's important for it to be balanced and checked. You know what I mean? Like you have to have an ego, like assertiveness, right? That's part of ego too, making sure that you're protected, that you're, like you said, not being taken advantage of, right? But
Mhm.
it's same in the same note or on the same token, someone that's overly, prideful and boastful and thinks they have all the answers, that's where the problem sets in, right? So
Yeah.
that it's that unchecked ego, whether it's you're lacking or you're overly, that's the real issue, right? I mean, it's good and balanced to have a right, just your usual, you know what I mean, like a balanced ego, I should say,
Mhm.
um versus it unchecked or overly or under, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And could I have been a more assertive person? Like I said, I don't like conflict. Um, but one thing I did learn through my divorce was I've learned to become more assertive.
Yeah.
Usually I'm like, whatever, I'm a lot like my dad, like, all right, whatever. I work hard, I don't let things bother me. But I have learned to speak up and say, you know what? I want this now. I deserve it. I want it. I'm gonna get it.
Mhm. Yeah, good for you. And truly, I mean, what good would a narcissist be if they don't get their way, right? I mean, they if people continue to enable, right, or and they're not assertive and they don't set clear boundaries, they're just going to continue to take advantage. If not you, then the next person or the next person, right? So it's like
Right.
a lesson for all of us, right? We need to be more
Mhm.
assertive, set clear boundaries for anyone, especially the ones we love, because even they, can really hurt us and if
Right.
we allow it,
Well,
so
I think for me, when I was dealing with him through the marriage, even though I didn't know what narcissism was, I did learn that one way you deal with a narcissist is you don't give them what they want. And I guess in a very passive aggressive way, that's how I dealt with him. I just, like if he said things to trigger me, I wouldn't show him that I was angry. That's when I would go for a walk. I made it that I didn't let it bother me. Inside I was boiling and I would go for my walk, but I wouldn't react to what he was doing. And from what I've read on narcissism, that's how you deal with it. You don't give them what they want.
yeah.
You
What
don't
do you
fight with them, don't reply back. And that's why I think I wouldn't have anything to say to him because he would come right back at me and that would want me to say something and I'd get nowhere.
what do you think prevents people in general from changing or evolving for the better?
Fear. Um, people are afraid of change. Um, yeah, I would just say fear of change. But you know what, like for me, having to move, like my lawyers recommended to buy another house and start fresh. And you know, at first I was upset. I did want to stay in the marital home with the kids. And, I was told by other lawyers it was a huge mistake. And that was one of the reasons why I lost the custody because the kids ultimately did want to stay in the marital home. But, the home I'm in now, I walk in, it's my safe haven. My other home was not a safe haven. I didn't know from one minute to the next how I was going to be treated, how the kids were going to be treated, what was going to happen. Here, I come home, I feel very safe, I'm comfortable. Even my kids always say when they come here, I always fall asleep on the couch. And in the back of my head, I say to myself, it's because it's a safe place.
Mhm.
When they were at their father's, they were always on edge and they couldn't really get a good night's sleep. They do come here and they sleep for hours.
Yeah,
And they know they can do that because they're safe in my home.
yeah, absolutely. If you alone could implement a positive change, anything, what would it be?
I would like to change the legal system, to do what's right for the kids, because ultimately in a divorce, it's the kids who are hurt the most. Like I've moved on with my life. I'm very happy. I look at my girls and I want to make sure that they're happy. That's all I've ever wanted for my kids is that they're happy, they're safe, and they're successful.
Right.
Um, and I feel like the divorce was definitely a setback. In talking with lawyers, they actually say, yeah, the legal system teaches kids to manipulate their parents. And, it prolongs the divorce. I mean, a divorce can end so much quicker if these lawyers just did the right thing. That like, in my opinion, his lawyer did very unscrupulous things to have him get away with a lot in the divorce. And I gave up a lot because I just wanted it to end. This should be over.
Yeah.
And I'll give an example of that. I filed for divorce about a month later. We had a four-way meeting. And he was not, I asked for full custody, sole occupancy of the marital home, and we were splitting the assets 50-50. He agreed to it. And I actually said to the lawyers, well, why aren't we signing papers right now? And my lawyers told me, well, it's an all or nothing deal. Now, later on, in speaking with other lawyers, they said, no, you could have signed papers at that point. Like we had agreed on 50-50, joint custody. We agreed that I would move out of the marital home. And I said, what does, like, my pension had to be evaluated. And I said, what does my pension have anything to do with custody of children? Well,
Right.
my pension was evaluated 3 times. Each time it was evaluated, it was a difference of maybe $10,000. And he was angry. So it went to court and he had to go with what the judge said. And the judge said, if you don't like my number, then you have to quadro it, which means that he doesn't get it until I retire. And he ended up choosing that. But we probably spent another $30,000 in legal fees 6 months later of fighting this. And then because he didn't like it, he said, now I want full custody. And I wasn't giving him full custody. I didn't think an alcoholic should have full custody. So we spent another year fighting. My legal bills went through the roof. It was $100,000 for this divorce. If we had signed those papers,
Mhm.
after that first month, I maybe would have spent 10,000 on the divorce. It's a big difference.
Yeah,
And not only financially, how it affected me and my family, but the emotional issues that went through, like what my daughters went through, the fighting with the divorce. It was grueling, and I know it hurt them.
yeah,
That's what hurt me most. It didn't have to happen. And that's what I want to see changed in the legal system. I feel like, like, I hate to say it, but lawyers are known for being very greedy. All they want is money. And at the end of the day, they really don't care what happens because they're getting paid. But it's sad. The kids
yeah,
are affected the most, and I would like to see the legal system in terms of divorces change so that the kids do not have the turmoil that my kids went through. Why does a divorce have to last that long? It's ridiculous.
right,
I understand with assets, the more you have, the harder it can be, but it doesn't have to be. We
right.
were told not to talk to our kids about the divorce. And I remember being in the courthouse and the legal secretary for the judge didn't know I was in the room. And she was saying those two parents need to stop talking about the divorce to their kids. And then she turned and she's like, who is that woman? And when my lawyers said who I was, she's like, she's not supposed to be in here.
Mm.
And I then told my lawyers, I was upset that she made that comment. I said, how can I be talking to my kids about the divorce? My kids aren't even living with me. I said, I keep
Yeah,
coming
and
to you and
right,
saying, I actually had a clause written in our settlement that the parent, each parent can't alienate one parent from the other. You have to foster a relationship because I wasn't seeing my kids. Now, how do I talk about a divorce to my kids? Meanwhile, my older daughter told me he had a marital lawyer girlfriend at the time. She said they would sit at the kitchen table discussing the divorce. She would give him all this advice, not his own lawyer, but the woman he was dating. And she said, Mom, I heard everything. So here I'm being painted as a bad person talking to my kids when it was him all along.
right. I mean, I know you were doing everything right. I mean, you were following it to the T, what you weren't, what you were supposed to do. And it's unfortunate because he broke all the rules and there's no justice, that justice, the system failed you and your girls. Like I
Mhm.
said, the fact that they had, he had full custody at some point, not, he
Well, he
wanted
did
full
it
custody.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
he asked for it. And
he asked for it and that they
And,
actually
and
went
again, the
entertaining it.
girls came to me one night and said, they knew this before I did. They were like, Dad's getting full custody, but we don't want to live with him all the time. And all I could say was, well, my hands are tied because whatever you're saying to your legal guardian, she makes the decision.
But
And
didn't
they
he
said,
get full custody at one point or no?
no, he didn't.
Oh, he
He
never did?
asked
Okay.
for it. He
He
asked for
asked
it.
for it. Okay.
And clearly he talked about it, oh, hey, he must have bragged to the girls that he was getting full custody. And they immediately came to me saying, we don't want him to have full custody. And I said, well, I can't change that. I said, it's whatever you're telling your legal guardian. So they said,
Right.
well, how can we change that? And I said, well, you have to speak with her.
Yeah.
So I called the legal guardian. That was my second appointment with her. Meanwhile, he had numerous appointments, the girls
Yeah.
with her. And she did change it to joint custody, but he got residential custody because of the whole marital home, they wanted to live in the marital home and, uh, yeah, so I ended up having to pay him child support, which
Right. Because of the residential custody, right? Yeah.
yeah, and then my kids would complain to me, he doesn't, there's never food. If we ask, like toiletries for females, they said they never got anything. So I'm like, well, I have no control. I write a check out every month. I don't know where the money's going. You have to speak to your father.
That's so unfortunate.
Yeah,
Like I said, hopefully karma, good shall prevail, right?
yeah,
Hope for justice, right?
yes.
Hopefully
So
it'll
that's
get
what
better.
would change the legal system. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add or convey or
No,
no?
I think that's it. I just wish people well. And I'm glad I could share my story and I hope I can help people out.
Perfect. I'm sure you did and you will. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.